What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're picking up exactly where we left off on the GC8. Obviously we cut the whole front end off on the last video, which if you didn't see, make sure you check that out. So now we need to square up all the cuts that we did because we kind of just did a rough cut to get all that metal out of the way. So now we got to get everything square, and then we can start cleaning it up, getting ready to plate exactly where the tube front end is going to bolt to, because I am going to make it removable, because I think it would be awesome to be able to pull this off if I ever need to do a motor swap, anything like that, and it just looks a lot cooler that you can take the whole front end off. Now, before we actually get started, I want to weigh all the stuff we cut off, because I want to keep like a running total of everything that we're removing from the car and all the metal that we're actually going to be adding back into the car, so we can kind of figure out roughly how much weight we're actually going to be losing off the car. Since if you didn't see that video where we weighed the car with these scales, it's pretty heavy. It's 2,800 pounds. A little over 2,800 pounds, almost 2,900 pounds. So we're going to try to get down to like 2,650, hopefully. We'll see though. But I'm going to hold on to this and kind of like try to weigh it while I'm holding it. I think it would be probably the best option. 250.3. So that's 41.1 pounds difference. So that's all of the front end that was removed. 41 pounds. Obviously, a lot of that metal is going to come back in the form of tubes or whatever we add. So we're not losing all of that weight. And I also want to weigh the bumper beam because that thing is heavy and we're replacing that. 249.8. So already we have cut off 81 pounds off the front end. Obviously, a lot of that metal is going to come back in some sort, whether it's tubes, sheet metal, everything that we add. So we're still going to add some of that weight back, but it should be considerably less and a lot stronger, because if you saw the last video, the whole core support is falling apart. Like you can see it right now. It's literally just being held together by like seam sealer in some areas. So pretty much had no structural integrity, so it's gonna be nice to get rid of that. All right, so I need to stop delaying the inevitable, get to work on this thing. It's pretty late already today. I haven't really done much. But we're going to start by squaring up the two frame rails. Since we did that rough cut initially, we're going to measure from the firewall to the end of both frame rails, get an equal distance, square it up, clean it up so that we can get a plate on there, and then pretty much do the same thing with the strut towers. All right, we are ready to start on the templates for all four of these spots. All of it's cleaned up. I dropped the subframe. I can get a little bit more clearance when I need to. I still have to weld up that one because I decided to cut it all up. And definitely going to need to fix that. Shouldn't be too hard to take care of though, as you can kind of see it. Yeah. But yeah, we got to do all the templates for these. These are going to be a pretty decent sized plate up here because I kind of want to like have a decent amount of meat coming around, wrapping in, just to really strengthen up both the strut tower as well as like the whole side rail that goes into the cabin. We don't need that to get out of whack or anything like that from not having enough strength. Some good old-fashioned cabin crunch helping out with the templates today. It's always the best cardboard stuff to use, unless you actually buy that stuff. You can buy the stuff that goes on the floor for like remodels and stuff like that and get in the whole sheet, but I don't really go through it enough to like justify that. It gives me a reason to buy something like Captain Crunch. We got both plates done for the frame rails. You saw me put those dots. That's because we got to do holes going through there and then put weld nuts on the back of these plates. I don't think I'm going to be able to get 4 because there's structure on the inside of those frame rails that actually hold up the subframe. So I don't want to hassle that kind of stuff and get rid of it and kind of ruin the integrity. And I'm going to be a lot more precise on where I'm going to be drilling the holes. Where I just marked, that was just for reference, so I didn't mess up which plate goes where and upside down and stuff. I got my 1.5" hole saw, and that's going to be my reference since it's going to be an 1.5" tube coming off the frame rails. So I'm just going to mark all the holes, drill them, and then we'll start putting weld nuts on the back. Finally, I got those in. Those took me a long time because I definitely had to trim a lot of the inside of the frame rail, and that's exactly what I said I didn't want to do. Honestly, with the 1/8" plate being welded all around, it's going to add a lot of stability to it too, and I didn't want to get rid of too much, so I didn't get too much. So I definitely took a lot longer doing it because of how I was going about it to not remove as much as I wanted to. Definitely would have been a lot easier if I just removed a lot of it. But we got those in there. I tightened them up so that the weld nuts are tight exactly where they need to go. I'm going to pull those out, clean them up real quick, and then tack them into place. I'm just going to MIG them on the back. Everything that's getting welded to the body is going to just be MIG welded because it's so much easier to do that. But everything else is going to be TIG welded because I need more practice TIG welding. and I like it to look a little bit better. Not that my welds necessarily look that good, but TIGging usually will look a little bit better than MIG welding. And like I said, I need to practice. So I'm gonna pull those out real quick, weld them together, and then we'll finally start on the strut tower plates. Well, obviously, it is the next day. I didn't get much work done last night. Actually, yesterday I really didn't get that much done. I had a late start because I was doing all the design of the actual front end in CAD, and it took me a long time because still kind of learning Solidworks. But I think we have these plates done enough that we can start putting the weld nuts on the back. We're going to weld these on. We do have to bend this section on both plates in a little bit so that it actually like contours to the strut tower. I wanted to wait till I welded these on. That way it's flat and I don't have to worry about having that bend in there. So once we get these welded in, we're going to bend it up and then just start massaging them. Probably have to make a little bit of changes here and there. I don't have to make any holes. I wanted to put the plates here, that way I didn't have to make any holes in the strut tower. I'm just going to use those frame rail holes that are already there, and it lines up fine with being directly below where the fender is actually going to mount up. So I'm just going to make little tabs that are going to come off to actually mount the fender. That'll be a lot farther in the future once we actually start bending some tubes, but I'm going to weld these on real quick and then we'll start massaging these plates in. Well, that took a lot of persuasion, but we got both of them on there, tacked into place, pretty sturdy right now. The fitment is pretty good. There's a little bit of a gap in some places, but honestly, it's not too bad. We got it all contoured decently well. So now begins the very fun part of stitch welding all of this to the sheet metal. This is literally like my least favorite part about any sort of fabrication or car building. Because when you're welding 1/8 inch plate to super thin sheet metal like all modern cars have, Subarus are definitely not an exception. It's like 20 gauge, if not a little bit thinner. It literally just burns through constantly. So you pretty much have to just do like a little bit more than a normal tack. Try to get a couple of like little weaves in there so that you can get decent penetration into both and then get it to lay flat, because you don't want to just keep stacking tacks on top of each other. It might look okay, but it's really not grabbing the sheet metal or penetrating both pieces of metal because it's really not getting hot enough. So you really don't want to do that unless you run really hot settings and you just do a really quick tack. There's a few ways that you can do it. I'm definitely not that good at it though. It takes a lot of practice. It's hard to practice on a bench because it's super easy on a bench, and then once you get on a car, it's a lot harder because you have all the crap that you couldn't get off because you start burning through on the underside, and then that's going to get in your weld because all the seam sealer underneath and everything like that. Everything starts on fire usually when you're doing this too. I'm sure the inside of the strut tower is going to start burning, and unfortunately my respirator is somehow lost, so I don't have one right now, so I'm going to be breathing all that crap in, which really sucks. I'm going to put on some more welding appropriate clothes so I don't get all burned, since I'm going to be doing a decent amount of welding and not use some thin mechanics that are just going to get burned to like smithereens like as soon as all the splatter starts going, as soon as they hit the undercoating on the back. I am finally done plating it, making the mounts and everything like that. We got it all mocked up in there. So we're ready to actually start bending tubes and all that kind of fun stuff. Definitely excited to be past this step. I hate in the plating portion of any sort of fab work, like I was saying. It's just really hard to make it look good. As you can see, some of it turned out okay, but a lot of the other welds like look pretty bad, and that's usually what happens when I weld plate to like thin sheet metal. So I definitely need a lot more practice with that. Play with settings some more. I got good penetration. It's definitely in there, plenty strong enough, but not the prettiest thing to look at. Now, before I end the video off real quick, I'm going to go into Solidworks and show you guys the design that the front end is hopefully going to take. All right, so this is the basic design that the tube front end is going to take. Everything is structurally correct as far as dimensions. So we've got the plates representing the strut towers where that's going to go, and then the frame rails in the lower section. The smaller tubes that you see in this are all 1/2 inch DOM 065 wall. So as you can imagine, that stuff's pretty small. It's not really going to be that strong by itself, but that's why we have so many support pieces in there so that it can all tie in together, and it's going to get a lot of strength that way. And the larger tubes that you see there, those are all going to be the 1.5 inch 095 wall tubing, and that's going to make up a lot of like the main strength of the tube front end, and it's going to provide the mounting places for the bumper with where the bash bar is. So yeah, hopefully it ends up looking like that CAD drawing. I'm just kind of messing around with SolidWorks, kind of want to learn a little bit more so that I can utilize it a lot more in the future on this build and other stuff that I'll be doing in the future. So that's why I incorporated that into this, and gives you guys a good visual representation of what it's going to actually look like supposedly before before I actually do it. Now I'll finally end out this video. I have filled up like 3 memory cards recording this. I filmed probably entirely too much of what I was doing since everything was super simple. It just took me a really long time, and I probably need to like be a little better about how much I actually film and only show the important stuff. That way it's easier for me to edit too. And it's not just boring to watch me do the same thing over and over again in the same video. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know. Stay tuned for a lot more updates on this thing. I plan on continuing the grind on this thing and continuing to knock out a bunch of the stuff for the tube front end and get this thing back on the road and hopefully stage rally ready relatively soon. So with that, guys, I'll see you with the next video where hopefully we're bending some tubes for the front end.